The courtroom doors in Jacksonville, Florida just witnessed something absolutely explosive, and what went down inside could be the beginning of the end for Meghan Markle's carefully constructed public image. Samantha Markle just went nuclear, and the fallout from this legal showdown is already sending shockwaves through royal circles, Hollywood, and beyond.
If Meghan was here now, what would you say to her?
And I say, what's wrong? How can I fix this? How can I fix this?
We're talking about accusations so devastating, so meticulously detailed, that they could leave Meghan's brand burned to ashes. Picture this, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, 3 judges sitting in judgment, and Samantha Markle's lawyer standing up to deliver what can only be described as a verbal demolition of everything Meghan has built. This wasn't just another routine court appearance. This was a calculated strike designed to expose what Samantha's team claims is the biggest deception in modern royal history.
I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows. I would have loved to have had siblings. That's why I'm so excited to be pregnant, so that Archie has someone.
The allegations? That Meghan Markle deliberately, systematically, and ruthlessly orchestrated a public destruction campaign against her own sister. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Samantha isn't just claiming Meghan said some mean things. She's arguing that Meghan weaponized her massive platform, her celebrity status, and her victim narrative to paint Samantha as a racist, a liar, and a troll in front of millions of people worldwide. And the consequences? Death threats, harassment, hate campaigns, a life turned completely upside down.
Silence everybody and just produce a DNA sample.
The timing couldn't be worse for Meghan. Just when she thought she'd put the family drama behind her, just when she was trying to rebuild her American dream with new business ventures and Hollywood connections, her estranged sister drags everything back into the spotlight with accusations that could destroy everything Meghan has worked so hard to create. The Sussex brand, already hanging by a thread after failed Netflix projects and Spotify deals, now faces its biggest threat yet.
If you had those things, it would be very easy just to put them out there and say, this is what happened. This is what it is.
Samantha's legal team came prepared for war. They didn't just throw around vague accusations. They brought receipts, they brought timelines, they brought a whole playbook of how Meghan used the Oprah interview and the Netflix series as weapons of mass reputation destruction. According to the filings, every word was calculated, every tear was strategic, every claim was designed to position Meghan as the victim while painting Samantha as the villain. And the most devastating part? Samantha's lawyer, Peter Tickton, stood before those judges and called Meghan's media appearances a literal manual on how to destroy someone's life while avoiding legal consequences.
So all the pictures, my point is, out there were inconsistent with the idea of a real pregnancy.
Think about that for a second. He's essentially accusing Meghan of being so calculated, so methodical in her takedown of Samantha, that it could serve as a blueprint for character assassination. The courtroom atmosphere was reportedly tense, electric with the weight of what was being discussed. What nobody expected was just how explosive these allegations would become. The public is already taking sides, and the internet is absolutely on fire. But here's what really matters. This legal battle could determine whether Meghan's entire public narrative was built on deception. And that's just the beginning of this nuclear fallout.
And I thought, is she not contextually aware? She's trying to hide something. This is really sloppy pool.
Inside that Jacksonville courtroom, Samantha's lawyer didn't hold back for even a second. Peter Tickton stood before those 3 appellate judges and delivered what can only be described as a prosecutorial masterclass in exposing alleged calculated cruelty. His opening statement hit like a freight train. The whole purpose was to destroy Samantha Markle, not discourage her, not distance from her, destroy her. Let that word sink in for a moment, because it reveals everything about what Samantha's team believes Meghan was trying to accomplish. According to Tickton's explosive arguments, Meghan didn't just accidentally hurt her sister's feelings during a tell-all interview. She launched what he called a cumulative and devastating attack designed to systematically dismantle Samantha's reputation, safety, and very existence in society. Every word choice in that Oprah interview was intentional. Every tearful moment in the Netflix documentary was strategic. Every implication about Samantha's character was meant to trigger exactly what happened, a tsunami of hatred directed at one woman. The courtroom heard details about how Meghan's portrayal of herself as essentially an only child wasn't just a creative interpretation of her childhood. It was, according to Samantha's legal team, a deliberate erasure of Samantha's existence designed to make any criticism from her seem like it was coming from a stranger rather than family. Think about the genius of that strategy. If people believe you barely know your half-sister, then anything she says can be dismissed as the rantings of someone desperate for attention. But Tickton went even further. He painted a picture of Meghan as a master manipulator who understood exactly how to weaponize modern media while staying just barely on the right side of legal liability. The associations Meghan made, the language she used, the way she positioned Samantha as someone spreading disinformation, it was all part of what Tickton called a manual in character destruction. A step-by-step guide that other celebrities could follow to ruin someone's life without technically committing defamation. Here's where it gets truly chilling. Tickton told the judges that Samantha is now hated in her own communities, not disliked, not criticized, hated, because of what Meghan unleashed with her carefully chosen words and strategic implications. The threats that followed weren't just random internet trolls. They were, according to the lawsuit, the predictable and intended result of Meghan's public campaign. The lawyer didn't stop there. He argued that Meghan used her position, her platform, and her perceived victimhood as weapons. She knew millions would watch. She knew people would believe her. She knew that painting Samantha as a racist troll would trigger exactly the kind of mob mentality that could destroy a person. And according to Tickton, she did it anyway, perhaps even because she knew it would work so effectively. What makes this argument so powerful is the detail. This wasn't a vague accusation of hurt feelings. This was a precise breakdown of how someone with Meghan's level of influence could methodically destroy another person's life while maintaining plausible deniability, and the judges were listening to every single word. Now let's talk about the moment that started this entire avalanche of destruction. The only child claim that Samantha's team says was ground zero for the smear campaign. During that blockbuster Oprah interview watched by millions worldwide, Meghan painted a picture of growing up essentially alone, without siblings, without family support, just her and her mother against the world. Sounds sympathetic, right? Except there was one massive problem: Samantha Markle exists, and she has decades of family history to prove it. Samantha's legal team argues this wasn't just Meghan being poetic about feeling emotionally isolated. This was a calculated strategic move to erase Samantha from the narrative entirely. Because here's the thing, if Meghan admits she has a half-sister she grew up knowing, then Samantha's criticisms carry weight. They come from someone with actual insight into Meghan's character and past. But if Meghan can convince the world she barely knew Samantha, then anything Samantha says becomes desperate attention-seeking from a virtual stranger. The genius and alleged cruelty of this approach cannot be overstated. With just a few carefully chosen words about being an only child, Meghan potentially delegitimized every single thing Samantha might say about their shared history. It wasn't just about distancing herself from family drama. According to the lawsuit, it was about weaponizing that distance to destroy Samantha's credibility before she even opened her mouth. But the consequences went far beyond just making Samantha look bad. According to court filings, this portrayal triggered an absolute onslaught of harassment. People who believed Meghan's version of events saw Samantha as an opportunistic liar trying to ride on her famous sister's coattails. The hate messages started flooding in. The death threats followed. All because Meghan positioned herself as someone who never really had siblings to begin with. Samantha's team claims they have evidence proving the opposite. Photos of family gatherings, proof of communication, documentation of a relationship that was far more substantial than Meghan let on to Oprah and the world. If this evidence holds up, it could blow Meghan's entire narrative apart. Because if she lied about something so fundamental, what else might she have manipulated for public sympathy? Think about the ripple effects of this one claim. Every interview where Meghan talked about feeling alone, every tear shed about isolation, every implication that her family rejected her becomes questionable if it turns out she actively erased siblings from her story. The public invested emotionally in Meghan's tale of being a lonely outsider fighting against institutional racism and family abandonment. Discovering that parts of that story were manufactured would shatter that emotional connection. What makes this particular accusation so explosive is how it undermines everything. The only child framing wasn't just about one relationship. It was the foundation of Meghan's victim narrative. It set up the dynamic where she was always the underdog, always fighting alone, always misunderstood by cruel family members who barely knew her. If that foundation crumbles, the entire structure of public sympathy might collapse with it. But wait, because the alleged destruction campaign didn't stop with just Meghan's words. Enter Christopher Boozy, the social media analyst, who appeared in the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary and, according to Samantha's lawsuit, became the amplification device that turned Meghan's implications into a full-scale character assassination. This is where things get absolutely diabolical, because Boozy's appearance wasn't just random commentary. Samantha's team claims it was a strategic move to weaponize data and analytics against her. Boozy came armed with charts, graphs, and social media analysis that painted Samantha as part of a coordinated disinformation campaign against Meghan. He used terms like racist troll and suggested Samantha was spreading lies as part of an organized hate network. And here's the kicker. Millions of Netflix subscribers watched this analysis presented as fact-based research. Not opinion, not speculation, but cold, hard data proving Samantha was one of the villains in Meghan's story. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. Suddenly, it wasn't just Meghan saying her family was cruel. It was a supposed expert with graphs and statistics backing up the claim that Samantha was actively participating in racist harassment campaigns. The legitimacy that Boosie's analyst role provided transformed vague family drama into what appeared to be documented proof of Samantha's villainous behavior, and the internet mob responded exactly as you'd expect. Samantha's legal team argues this was all by design. They claim Meghan and Harry carefully selected Boosie, knowing his analysis would paint Samantha in the worst possible light. By having a third party make these accusations rather than saying them directly, Meghan could maintain plausible deniability while still destroying Samantha's reputation. It's the perfect legal strategy. Let someone else do your dirty work while you sit back looking innocent. The Netflix platform gave these accusations unprecedented reach. We're not talking about a tabloid article or a social media post. This was a multi-million-dollar documentary series watched by audiences around the globe. Boosie's segment meant that people in countries Samantha would never visit, speaking languages she doesn't speak, now believe she was a racist troll spreading disinformation. The scale of the reputational damage is almost impossible to calculate. According to court documents, the harassment intensified dramatically after the Netflix series dropped. The death threats multiplied. The hate messages became more specific, more vicious, more relentless. People weren't just calling Samantha mean names anymore. They were citing Boosie's analysis as proof that she deserved whatever hatred came her way. She wasn't just Meghan's estranged sister anymore. She was a documented villain in a story watched by millions. What makes this particularly damning is that Samantha had no opportunity to defend herself in the documentary, no right of reply, no chance to present her side of the story or challenge Boosie's methodology. She was tried, convicted, and sentenced in the court of public opinion without ever being able to speak in her own defense, and now her legal team is arguing that this wasn't accidental. It was exactly what Meghan wanted to happen. But here's where Samantha's supposedly bulletproof case hit a massive wall. The three judges sitting on that appellate panel didn't seem particularly impressed with the arguments being presented. In fact, their questions and comments suggested they thought Samantha's legal team might be completely missing the point of why the district court threw out this lawsuit in the first place. The skepticism in that courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. The judges started probing, asking pointed questions about whether Samantha's lawyers had actually addressed the core reasoning behind the original dismissal. See, the district court didn't just randomly decide to toss this case. They had specific legal grounds for saying Samantha's claims didn't hold water. And now these appellate judges were suggesting that Peter Tickton and his team were arguing around those issues instead of confronting them head-on. One judge reportedly questioned whether the arguments being presented were, and this is the brutal part, beside the point. Think about how devastating that assessment is. Samantha's team spent months preparing this appeal. They brought all this evidence about alleged destruction campaigns and coordinated attacks. They painted Meghan as a master manipulator, running a systematic takedown operation. And the judges are essentially saying, that's all very interesting, but it doesn't address the actual legal questions we need answered. The legal problem for Samantha is complicated. Courts have long recognized that opinions, even harsh ones, are generally protected speech. The bar for proving defamation, especially against a public figure like Samantha has become, is incredibly high. You can't just prove someone said mean things about you. You have to prove they made false statements of fact with actual malice, and that's a mountain Samantha's team is struggling to climb. The judges also seemed concerned about whether Samantha was trying to hold Meghan responsible for things other people said. This is crucial because Boosie's statements were his own. The Netflix producers made editorial decisions. The millions of people who sent hate messages made their own choices. Legally speaking, you generally can't sue someone for what third parties decided to say or do, even if those third parties were allegedly inspired by the defendant's statements. What emerged during the hearing was a fundamental disconnect between what Samantha's team wanted to argue and what the law actually allows them to prove. They wanted to talk about cumulative damage and destruction campaigns and strategic manipulation, but the judges needed to hear specific false statements of fact that Meghan herself made with knowledge they were false or reckless disregard for the truth. And that gap between narrative and legal requirement became painfully obvious. The courtroom observers could feel the case slipping away. Every time Tickton tried to paint the big picture of systematic destruction, the judges pulled him back to narrow legal technicalities. Every emotional appeal about death threats and harassment ran into the cold reality of First Amendment protections and legal precedent. The nuclear attack Samantha launched was meeting a defense she might not be able to penetrate. And then Meghan's legal team stepped up to deliver their own devastating counterattack. They didn't just defend Meghan. They went on the offensive, systematically dismantling Samantha's entire case with surgical precision. The message was crystal clear. This lawsuit is a desperate attempt to silence protected opinions and hold Meghan responsible for what other people chose to say and do. Meghan's lawyers argued that everything Samantha complained about falls squarely under protected speech. When Meghan talked about her childhood experiences, she was sharing her own subjective feelings and memories. When she discussed feeling isolated, that was her personal emotional truth. And when third parties like Christopher Boozy analyzed social media data, those were his independent conclusions based on his own research. None of it, according to Meghan's defense, crosses the line into actionable defamation. The legal team hammered home a crucial point that could sink Samantha's case entirely. Opinions cannot be defamatory. If Meghan said she felt like an only child growing up, that's an opinion about her emotional experience. If she implied her family was unsupportive, that's her perspective on relationships. Courts have consistently held that you cannot sue someone for expressing how they felt or what they believed about their own life experiences. But Meghan's lawyers went even further. They argued that Samantha was essentially trying to control Meghan's narrative about her own life. The defense painted Samantha as someone who couldn't handle that her famous sister told a different story than the one Samantha wanted told. This wasn't about defamation, according to Meghan's team. This was about one person trying to use the legal system to force another person to tell their life story a certain way. The Netflix documentary came under particular defense. Meghan's lawyers pointed out that she and Harry had editorial control over their own statements, but they weren't responsible for every expert opinion or analysis included in the series. If Boozy made claims about Samantha, that's between Boozy and Samantha. If producers chose certain narratives, those were editorial decisions. Trying to hold Meghan liable for an entire documentary's content, they argued, was legally absurd. What really emerged from Meghan's defense was a strategic repositioning. They flipped the victim narrative completely. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the villain destroying her sister. She was the victim of a vindictive family member, using lawsuits to harass and silence her. And legally speaking, that argument might be exactly what saves Meghan from this nuclear attack. And then Meghan's legal team stepped up to deliver their own devastating counterattack. They didn't just defend Meghan, they went on the offensive, systematically dismantling Samantha's entire case with surgical precision. The message was crystal clear. This lawsuit is a desperate attempt to silence protected opinions and hold Meghan responsible for what other people chose to say and do. Meghan's lawyers argued that everything Samantha complained about falls squarely under protected speech. When Meghan talked about her childhood experiences, she was sharing her own subjective feelings and memories. When she discussed feeling isolated, that was her personal emotional truth. And when third parties like Christopher Boozy analyzed social media data, those were his independent conclusions based on his own research. None of it, according to Meghan's defense, crosses the line into actionable defamation. The legal team hammered home a crucial point that could sink Samantha's case entirely. Opinions cannot be defamatory. If Meghan said she felt like an only child growing up, that's an opinion about her emotional experience. If she implied her family was unsupportive, that's her perspective on relationships. Courts have consistently held that you cannot sue someone for expressing how they felt or what they believed about their own life experiences. But Meghan's lawyers went even further. They argued that Samantha was essentially trying to control Meghan's narrative about her own life. The defense painted Samantha as someone who couldn't handle that her famous sister told a different story than the one Samantha wanted told. This wasn't about defamation, according to Meghan's team. This was about one person trying to use the legal system to force another person to tell their life story a certain way. The Netflix documentary came under particular defense. Meghan's lawyers pointed out that she and Harry had editorial control over their own statements, but they weren't responsible for every expert opinion or analysis included in the series. If Boozy made claims about Samantha, that's between Boozy and Samantha. If producers chose certain narratives, those were editorial decisions. Trying to hold Meghan liable for an entire documentary's content, they argued, was legally absurd. What really emerged from Meghan's defense was a strategic repositioning. They flipped the victim narrative completely. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the villain destroying her sister. She was the victim of a vindictive family member, using lawsuits to harass and silence her. And legally speaking, that argument might be exactly what saves Meghan from this nuclear attack. But Samantha's team wasn't done fighting. They came armed with what they claim are the receipts that could completely demolish Meghan's carefully constructed narrative. We're talking about evidence of a relationship that Samantha says proves everything Meghan told the world was a lie. Photos, messages, family moments, all designed to show that Meghan didn't just exaggerate her isolation, she completely fabricated it for public sympathy. According to the legal filings, Samantha has documentation showing the sisters had a close and supportive relationship for years, not just casual acquaintance, not just obligatory family gatherings, but genuine sisterly connection that Meghan allegedly erased from history the moment it became inconvenient for her victim narrative. Think about what that means if it's true. Every tear Meghan shed about being alone, every implication that her family abandoned her, every suggestion that she barely knew her siblings, all potentially exposed as calculated fiction. The evidence reportedly includes photographs of the sisters together at various family events over the years, birthday celebrations, holiday gatherings, casual hangouts that show a relationship far more substantial than Meghan ever admitted to publicly. Samantha's team claims these images directly contradict Meghan's portrayal of growing up essentially without siblings. You can't feel like an only child when you're smiling in family photos with your sister year after year. But it's not just photos. Sources close to the case suggest there's communication evidence as well. Text messages, emails, conversations that show Meghan actively engaged with Samantha as family, not strangers. If this evidence exists and is as damning as Samantha's team suggests, it could prove Meghan knowingly misrepresented their relationship to millions of people. And that's where opinion protection might not save her, because claiming you barely knew someone when you have years of communication with them isn't opinion. It's potentially provable falsehood. What makes these receipts so potentially explosive is how they undermine everything. Meghan built her entire public persona on being isolated, abandoned, and alone. If Samantha can prove they had a loving relationship that Meghan deliberately erased, it calls into question every other claim Meghan has made about her family dynamics. It suggests a pattern of deception designed to garner sympathy and victimhood status, while throwing real family members under the bus. The question now is whether these receipts will ever see the light of day in court, or if Meghan's legal defenses will prevent Samantha from ever presenting this evidence to a jury. The damage to Meghan's American reputation is happening in real time, and it's absolutely brutal. This courtroom showdown couldn't have come at a worse moment for the Duchess, who's been desperately trying to rebuild her brand in the United States after a string of failed ventures and fading public interest. Now, just when she needed positive momentum, Samantha's nuclear lawsuit is reminding Americans of all the family drama, alleged deception, and questionable narratives that have plagued Meghan from the beginning. Public opinion is shifting, and the signs are everywhere. Social media is exploding with renewed skepticism about Meghan's credibility. People who once defended her are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. If she could misrepresent her relationship with Samantha, what else might she have exaggerated or manipulated? The foundation of trust that Meghan built with the American public through that Oprah interview is cracking, and each new revelation from this lawsuit makes the fractures wider and deeper. The timing is catastrophic for Meghan's business ventures. She's been trying to position herself as an authentic lifestyle guru, a relatable figure who overcame adversity through grace and dignity. But authenticity is everything in the American market, and accusations of systematic deception destroy that brand faster than anything else. Companies want to partner with people consumers trust. Audiences want to support personalities they believe are genuine. If Meghan loses that perception of authenticity, her commercial value plummets. What particularly damaging is how this lawsuit reinforces existing doubts Americans already had. The failed Spotify deal, the underwhelming Netflix content, the constant drama despite promises of privacy. Many Americans were already questioning whether Meghan's victim narrative matched reality. Now Samantha's legal assault is providing what looks like evidence that confirms those suspicions. It's creating a perfect storm where previous skepticism meets new allegations, and the result is devastating for Meghan's reputation. The media coverage is relentless. Every major outlet is picking apart the courtroom arguments. Every entertainment show is dissecting what this means for Meghan's credibility. The story has legs because it feeds into a narrative Americans love, the exposure of someone who might have manipulated public sympathy for personal gain. Fair or not, Meghan is being tried in the court of public opinion, and the verdict is looking increasingly unfavorable. Her American dream is burning, and Samantha's holding the match. But the damage isn't confined to American shores. This legal battle is creating global ripple effects that are reigniting debates about Meghan's credibility from London to Tokyo, from Sydney to Paris. International media outlets are seizing on every detail of Samantha's nuclear assault, and the coverage is absolutely brutal. Headlines around the world are questioning whether everything Meghan told us was carefully constructed fiction designed to win sympathy while destroying anyone who threatened her narrative. British tabloids are having an absolute field day. After years of being painted as the villains in Meghan's story, they're watching vindication potentially unfold in real time. Every accusation from Samantha's legal team is being amplified, analyzed, and presented as evidence that maybe, just maybe, they were right about Meghan all along. The schadenfreude is palpable. Publications that were accused of racist harassment are now pointing to this lawsuit as proof they were simply reporting facts about someone willing to manipulate truth for personal gain. European coverage is particularly fascinating because it's approaching the story from a different angle. Continental media outlets are framing this as a cautionary tale about celebrity victimhood culture and the dangers of accepting emotional narratives without evidence. French newspapers are philosophical about it. German publications are methodical in their analysis. Italian media is dramatic in their coverage. But they're all asking the same fundamental question: did Meghan fool the entire world? The Commonwealth nations are watching with particular interest. Countries that still have connections to the British royal family are seeing this lawsuit as validation of their initial skepticism about Meghan's claims. Australian media is brutally direct. Canadian coverage is more measured but equally skeptical. New Zealand outlets are questioning how someone could potentially weaponize victimhood on such a massive scale. The global Commonwealth is collectively reassessing everything they thought they knew about the Sussex saga. Asian markets are also paying close attention, particularly because Meghan has been trying to expand her brand influence in these regions. But authenticity matters everywhere, and revelations about potential deception translate across all cultures. Japanese media's coverage is respectful but pointed. Korean outlets are analyzing the PR implications, Chinese social media is dissecting every angle. The global conversation is uniformly skeptical, and that's catastrophic for someone trying to build an international brand. What makes this global coverage so damaging is the consensus emerging across different cultures and political perspectives. Whether conservative or liberal, whether British or American or Australian, media outlets worldwide are questioning Meghan's fundamental credibility. That's not a PR crisis, that's a complete brand collapse happening in real time across multiple continents. So where does this nuclear legal war go from here? The appellate court now has to decide whether Samantha's case has enough merit to survive, or whether Meghan's defenses will kill it permanently. If the judges rule in Samantha's favor, this case goes back to district court where discovery could expose every dirty secret, every calculated move, every piece of evidence that either proves or disproves the systematic destruction campaign. That means depositions, document requests, potentially years of legal warfare that keeps this drama in headlines indefinitely. But if Meghan wins this appeal, it's not necessarily over either. Samantha has shown she's willing to fight this battle to the bitter end. She could appeal further. She could file new lawsuits based on different legal theories. She could take this fight to the court of public opinion, even if she loses in actual courts. This nuclear option she's deployed doesn't have an easy off switch, and the damage to Meghan's reputation might be permanent regardless of legal outcomes. The public is left to decide who to believe. Team Samantha sees a vindictive sister finally being held accountable for weaponizing her platform to destroy someone's life. Team Meghan sees a desperate attention seeker using the legal system to harass someone who simply told her own truth. And everyone in between is watching this family implosion, wondering how relationships can become so toxic that sisters end up in appellate courts accusing each other of systematic destruction. What happens next could define both sisters' futures forever. If Samantha wins, Meghan's credibility is destroyed, and her brand might never recover from being exposed as someone willing to fabricate victimhood while destroying real victims. If Meghan wins, Samantha looks like someone who wasted years and potentially millions on a frivolous lawsuit motivated by jealousy and spite. There's no middle ground here. Someone's reputation is going to be absolutely annihilated. The stakes couldn't be higher. Business deals, public perception, historical legacy. Everything is on the line in this legal battle that's become so much more than just a lawsuit. It's become a referendum on truth, victimhood, family loyalty, and whether someone can weaponize public sympathy to destroy others without consequences. So what do you think? Is Samantha's nuclear assault justified, or is this a desperate attack from someone who can't handle her sister's success? Drop your thoughts below, like and subscribe, and stay tuned because the next video is waiting, and you won't believe what bombshell is about to drop next in this never-ending royal drama.